It's time for today's Bulldog Conversation, presented by the Samford Sports Network.
I'm sitting with Dr. Fred Shepard, Chair of the Political Science Department here at Samford. We're actually sitting in your office, so thank you for inviting us in.
My pleasure.
It's great to be sitting with you. You have become very interested. You're Chair of the Political Science Department, but among your interests, genocide and human rights.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how those have become interest to you.
A lot of it goes back to when I was a college student, getting interested in social justice and policy issues and that type of thing. And so I've always kind of broadly been focused on those types of things. About 8 or 9 years ago, I attended a seminar where we discussed genocide, and a lot of my previous interests, I found they actually fit pretty well. With a focus on I kind of joke that it got even less cheerful as I focused on something like genocide. And you know, the traditional approach with genocide is to focus on really the really awful case that's held up as kind of the paradigm, and that's the Holocaust. But the field has really grown, and you know, we've had these awful occurrences in places like Rwanda and now Darfur. My interest has always been Latin America, and the case I've focused on is the case of Guatemala. And I feel like I'm doing my little bit by broadening the focus to these other cases. But it's such a fascinating topic because you're trying to understand what is in some ways impossible to understand, how a society can mobilize to try to wipe out other groups within its boundaries. And it's a horrible topic, but it's also a fascinating topic. And one of the things I really try to drum home to students and to colleagues and things like that is anyone can do it. And it's something that such a wide variety of people have participated in. There are no easy explanations that say those types of people would do it, we would never do it. It's not that simple, and it's a tough lesson to learn, but it's really fascinating.
And you mentioned it's a tough subject to study and to talk about, but something we need to talk about. And you mentioned some areas, Darfur, areas that I've heard a lot around campus. Students are very involved in human rights and exploring genocide. Talk a little bit about, I guess, the importance of student involvement with that, and how you feel the Samford students are. Yeah,
so the heartening, the really disturbing thing is that anyone could do these horrible things, but the heartening thing is that people learn about it and they get involved and become part of a movement to stop genocide. And that's also part of understanding genocide, is also understanding the people who resist it and who get involved, and people who have no sort of objective reason living in Birmingham, Alabama, to care about what happens in Darfur, yet they get exposed to those conditions, they see common humanity, and they get involved, and they devote lots of energy and lots of resources. And I'm really been pleased and impressed about the work that our students have done. And I've attended several events where folks who are involved in these movements point out what great work Samford students are doing. So it's really been heartening.
Great. That's good to hear. Now, in talking about Samford and human rights, I think it was a Samford conference or something along those lines that stemmed from a book that you've recently released. Can you talk a little bit about the book and how that came about?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, we hosted a big kind of national research conference on campus here that brought people from all over the country, and several folks from Africa and Europe and all over the world, really, to talk about both their kind of academic and their activist interaction with the issue of Christianity and human rights. And it really was an impressive bunch of folks. And Chris Mitras, an English professor and now the head of the Fellows Program, and I co-hosted it. And out of that, then, I collected some essays and wrote a significant chunk of it myself. And out of that, a book has just been published called Christianity and Human Rights. And it's really kind of brings an interesting variety of perspectives to this fascinating issue of how Christians have been involved in sort of the fight for global justice.
And I'm sure people could find that book on Amazon, wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's at the top of the bestseller list with Amazon, but it's there and it's available. It brings up some interesting points about Christianity and human rights.
Great. Well, now in closing, how could someone find out more about the political science department here at Samford, which you're involved in, or maybe the human rights that students are involved in here on campus?
Right. Well, there's a sort of a real ferment, and it's not just in my department. All over the place, there are students sort of taking their Christianity very seriously, and their commitment to other folks and social justice and that type of thing. You can look us up on the website. we've got a big department. We've got about 110 majors, and again, I'm really proud of the students and the work they've been doing. Both as this time of year, I see the good work they're doing in the classroom, but just as importantly, I'm watching the good things they're doing, pushing for social justice and in the area of human rights and that type of thing.
Great. Well, we are out of time. It was great to visit you in your office here. I enjoyed it. Again, that's Dr. Fred Shepard, Chair of the Political Science Department here at Samford. Thank you.
Thanks. Enjoyed it.
You've been listening to Bulldog Conversation with Nathan Troost. The Adventure Bus Charter's halftime show continues in a moment. This is the Samford Sports Network.